do you mean wait? We're having technical difficulties. Our lights were giving us some kind of disco show a minute ago. All right, here we are, planted.
Yep. I loved your message. I thought that it was neat how you brought in a plant, and it was. No, you're good. But I thought it was powerful, and just the way that the example that you used, and just how God spoke to me on the same thing a month before, and then I just took it for granted, thinking that I had told him what the Lord had showed me, and then the team coming up with planted. So I thought that was.
I like that you went there. I'm sorry, I just threw it to you like that.
Well, you're just staring at me. I thought you were going to open up.
Video today. So the reason that I'm glad you pointed that out is just to say something different than what we went over 4 times throughout the weekend was you would have not had that vision. Okay, we would have not heard from the Lord the way that we did in doing this series. I would not have seen this example given by Bishop Kevin Wallace that gave me the idea for the series if we had not intentionally implemented into our schedule a time of prayer, which was a staff time. And not being on staff at a church, you would obviously have to implement some other time, but it was in prayer, a planned time of prayer that you had a vision. It was in a planned time of listening and resourcing myself with and by other pastors and other messages that I saw in illustration. And you guys do the same thing. It was in our planned creative meeting that we developed more ideas and different things to say. So a lot of what God wanted to say to us came from the fact that we are planted with this plan. I love the spontaneous. I'm spirit-filled. I love the emotional. I'm an emotional person. I love the passionate. But I have found a lot of purpose in the planned portions of my week and my life.
Yeah.
Planted. Where you are planted affects what you produce. First half, Micah. Gen Z, come on, help us out.
I love it. Shows, just being in youth more than not. I really minister to youth students more than anything, and I love the idea of this communicates like what you put into yourself is what you're gonna eventually what will come out of you. So a lot of the times where we mess up or we drop the ball, the thing that we need to look at and evaluate is, okay, why did that just happen? What did I put in myself that made it okay to let that come out of me? Or whatever it is when that moment comes. A lot of times we can just evaluate what we've been planting ourselves in.
Yeah. Or allowing to be planted into us. Yeah. Like what you were saying, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Like, what are we allowing in? What are we allowing out? Because what comes in, comes out.
Yeah, because you reminded me between services yesterday, and I worked for a landscaping crew. I got a political science degree and went to work for a landscaping crew because God would not tell me what he wanted me to do. But it was our first year of marriage, and I needed to earn an income, and sometimes you just take what opportunity. Give me a shovel, I know how to use that. So I was a part of a crew, and I actually learned a lot about planting, putting things in people's flower beds, and actually planting pretty large, like sweet olive trees that we would have in different places. So when we built our house, I told her, I was like, well, I got this.
Can plant.
I know how to do this. The problem is the ground was not fertile. It was clay, and it was hard. And so I got about halfway down in my planting, and I realized that the tree roots were this thick, and the hole I had dug was this thick. So I dug a little bit further, but I still had like this much to go.
But it was still clay. It was hard.
Yeah, it was hard as a rock. It was concrete. It was a great foundation for a home. Horrible for planting a flower bed. So I just cut the bottom of the tree off with
like
the shovel.
roots.
Like I just turned the thing over, and I basically, like, I took this and I just chopped the whole thing off. Yeah. And I put it in the ground, you know, with a little bit of an inch to spare, covered the thing up with dirt, and I told her after we sold the house. So I don't know to this day, I don't know if that tree made it or not. It probably
did start dying.
It did not. You said it did, and I say it did not. You didn't even know I did that till after we moved. I'm driving. Look, whoever lives in Halton in our old house, I'm gonna come see you.
I think it's dead.
It's probably dead. It probably is. So the point of that was that Miss Janita told you in gardening, because we do have some people in our church that garden.
She walked up and said, "So do you plant? Do you garden?" I was like,
No, she
them.
doesn't weed the flower bed, much less plant or garden. But you do have some trees,
yes.
Some little
Anyways,
ferns.
let's get back on track.
Yeah, Miss Janita said what?
Yes. So she walks up and she said, the whole time he is preaching, all I can think about is like when I garden and when you replant a plant. She said you have to take it out and you have to literally reach inside of the roots and kind of break them up and pull them out, and the ones that are not healthy will fall out. She said because you can plant a tree or you can plant a plant, but if you don't plant it the correct way, it will die. And so if you don't do the proper things, then it's not going to continue to live the way that it was intended. So you have to reach in, break up the roots, and then when you actually put it into the ground, you have to make sure it's packed. If it has air holes and things, then it will die. It has to be completely packed in. And so
no voids.
Yeah, no voids. And it matters what you're putting into it, because
and how it's planted.
It brought me to the parable of the sower, and just looking at Jesus telling this parable, and he tells about 4 different seeds that were planted, and there was only one seed that actually sprouted and grew. And we see seeds in the rocky places, and when the sun comes out, it scorched them because they had no roots. And then we see the seed falling among thorns, and because they were planted among thorns and other leaves, when the seeds grew up and sprouted, they just got choked by everything else. And then there was only one seed, and it's when it fell on good soil. So we really, it's important that we pay attention to our foundation and where we're being planted and
how. And how and what we are truly planted in. And if we want to know what and how we are truly planted, we need to look at our plan. We need to look at our schedule for the week. We need to look at how let's go back to this, priorities drive productivity. We need to evaluate how we spend our time. Any thoughts in that passage area?
Well, last night during our family meeting, I asked my kids, you have to plan a time. So when are you going to do your devotion? When are you going to spend time with Jesus? Because we encourage our children to engage in the fast with us, and because we're teaching them at a young age.
And they love it.
Well,
it's not hard. They're just not eating candy. It's not like they're not like not eating food like I am. But it's still it's a discipline.
No sweets, no treats. You know?
No sweets, no treats.
And then teaching them how to make a plan. And so I asked them, what is your plan? You have to come up with a plan or you're not going to do it. And so that's what we talked about, coming up with a plan.
Yeah, I was even watching a podcast this morning, Grow Leader with Chris Hodges. They put out a podcast almost every month. I don't think they did in December, but this morning it was about your prayer life and having a personal and a corporate prayer life. And he began to talk about the psychology of just writing something down rather than just saying, oh, well, this is what I'll do for the fast, but the psychology of putting pen to paper and saying, this is what I'm going to do. And it just convinces you, and you really feel, I guess you just feel good about it because you're like, this is what, you have it in your hands and you're saying, this is what, and then it's also planning out every day, this is what I want to get done today. This is my goal. And then he's obviously the new year, he talked about the entire year and just writing down the goals that he has for this year and the things that he wants to do and then his church wants to do. Just talking about, because if you're not intentional, then at least if I'm not intentional, then I'm not going to do it. If I don't intentionally set time aside, then I'm probably not going to find or make the time to do it in a day.
Something that you say that I don't know, it That was me saying, don't interrupt. Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Something I say. You were saying something that he's talking about planning.
You said, like, if you don't, we have an appointment and we scheduled meetings for everything. We put time aside for the things that are most important. And why is it that we just think that we're going to spend time with God in happenstance? Right.
Yeah.
Like, you have to plan the meeting. So, I don't know. That sticks out to me.
Yeah, of all the things that we're very intentional about, that we don't leave, like you don't leave breakfast to chance. You know, you don't leave lunch to chance. Maybe I will eat today, maybe I won't. Yeah. But for some reason, we leave our soul to chance. We expect that spiritual things are just going to be done for us, where truly what I do for a living, how the income that I earn as followers of Christ, right, as Christians, as children of God, all of those things should be a byproduct of my relationship with Jesus and the time that I spend with God. But it's almost become, I say almost, it's really become, spending time with God has been like something that you're supposed to do if you're a Christian, but it's not the source. Like, you get everything else done, and then you add God to your schedule if there's time. Right. Versus making everything else revolve around your schedule, because we live in American culture, and we think taking 5 minutes to pray is a waste of time. Right. Because when we're praying for 5 minutes, we're thinking of all the other things that we should be doing, but none of those other things are actually eternal things. Yeah. They're all temporary things. So if we took everything that we put into our body, which is what I love about the fast, it flips that paradigm. Yeah. It shifts it back to where we refocus on the spiritual, and the physical becomes a byproduct. Right. Instead of being focused on the physical and hoping and or possibly believing that our soul and our spirit will be the byproduct of the physical. Yep. Giving something up so you can grow closer to God. By the way, Pastor Dylan will pick us a devotional if he hasn't already. I know that the one that we picked up formally from Into Gardens last week is still available on our Facebook page, and there will be another one posted. But YouVersion, if you're doing a 21-day fast, YouVersion Bible app has a ton of 21-day fasting devotionals from Pastor Jensen Franklin to Life Church. Church of the Highlands has one on prayer and fasting. There's all kinds. It's very easy to find if you just take the time to look. Giving something up to grow closer to God. What is the significance of fasting? That's what we were talking about with our children specifically. Yeah. Why do we fast?
Something I've learned over the past few years, because I really didn't fast until like 3 years ago for the first time. Something that I learned, that it wasn't only just like this is what I'm trying to get rid of in my life. This is what I'm trying to do as well. Like, I'm going to get rid of this in order to start this. Because a lot of times you'll get rid of something in a fast, but if you don't intentionally replace it, then you're just going to go right back to what you were doing before. And that's what I used to do all the time when we first started fasting. Or when I first started fasting, really.
So I actually, go ahead, because I'll remember.
Okay. I thought we should fast because I was like, well, this is me making a sacrifice. So I'm sacrificing. And so if I sacrifice this, then Jesus will do for me what I'm praying for. Mm-hmm. That was the idea that I had of what fasting was. But what I have learned is me taking the time and giving things up that I would normally do with my time. When I'm investing in other things, I'm actually investing in the eternal things. It's changing me. Yeah. It's helping me to refocus. It's helping me to grow. And so it's not me making this sacrifice. It's me making a shift and reforming good habits versus the bad habits that I've just been doing, not thinking about it, because I'm being more mindful. And I'm being more, I'm making priorities. I'm changing my priorities. And so that's what helped, like, the shift of thinking that I'm making this.
Right. That's what we were discussing yesterday. So first of all, we don't fast to force God's hand. Okay. We fast to find God's will, to figure out what God has, to hear His voice. And yesterday we mentioned, honestly, I don't know, for everybody, this may not be the case, but for me, it is specifically true that my stomach is the one thing that is most closely tied to my spirit.
You get hangry,
right?
angry.
Nobody asked you to interject and talk about our struggles, okay? You get hangry too, you just don't require as much to become unhangry because you're like this big, okay? So our stomach is tied to our spirit. And because we are spirit, soul, and body. And so we've talked about this before. If you don't take care of your body, then you're ultimately not taking care of your spirit and your soul. Right. And vice versa. If you're not taking care of your spirit and soul, then you're not taking care of your body. Your priorities are out of line. But as long as your spirit and your soul are in your body, then they are equally important to take care of. So denying my body its necessity for a short time. And this is very biblical, Old Testament to Jesus to New Testament, okay? When you do that, it makes you more mindful of the spirit and the soul. It makes you more mindful of God. So we fast to intentionally disconnect ourselves from things that we would otherwise just have. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't even think about it. Yeah. We'd just move on with our day, and we'd miss out on those moments. We talked about it in staff meeting this morning. The moments that we have had with God because we planned a 7-day fast, because we planned a 21-day fast. The moments that I've had with God because one year He told me, I want you to fast every day, every week, 1 day a week. And that year was a defining year for me. Mm-hmm. He told me to do it again at another time. There have been times where we fasted for 3 days at a time. The final thing it does is it gives you so much confidence. Yeah. Like it's not the sacrifice, it's knowing that you're in the right place with Jesus. Yes,
it gives you spiritual confidence with your relationship with Christ because you know you are like in communion with Him.
Yes, I'm praying with confidence. I know God hears my voice. Yeah. I haven't been eating, but God is honoring this. Yeah. I know He's with me. And if you want just an additive incentive, I'll probably mention this Sunday, but go read Isaiah 58. The prophet Isaiah reminds the nation of Israel why they should fast. Again, Isaiah 58. Any final thoughts? What we form. I love what you're saying. It's important. Yeah, we fast to remove things that need to be removed, but we have to replace those things or we'll just go right back to them. So focusing on what we're replacing and the habits we're forming are equally important to what we're fasting and getting rid of. Yeah. Final thoughts?
Just started thinking about it. Speaking on spirit, soul, and body. If you've gone through Freedom Group, or maybe you haven't, and here's a little preview.
And Freedom is for everyone.
Yeah.
Sign-ups. When are sign-ups?
Sign-ups start next month in February, right?
Beginning of next month.
Yes, beginning of next month. But Freedom Group, we kind of start speaking about spirit, soul, and body. And I think the notion going into that conversation almost every time is, okay, so your spirit's like the most important part, and then like you kind of neglect the other two. And the reality of it is that like all three are super important, and how we treat one or two of them will affect how we treat the other one. So a lot of times we feed our body and our soul more when our spirit is getting neglected. And I think what fasting does is, like you said, it shifts the paradigm and it changes. Rather than feeding everything else first, you're feeding your spirit, because your spirit is how you connect to God. So you're feeding you're feeding your connection to God in order to get rid and stop neglecting this part of you.
And then that feeds everything else. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you develop healthy habits that will outlast your fast. Yeah. Which is what our objective is, that we form for the next 20 days now. We form habits that will outlive the 21-day fast and last us, set the tone for, recalibrate our minds to hear from God and to obey His voice for the next 344 days. We're excited about the series. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. Let us know if you have it. We'll do our best to respond to comments as we go.
Bye, guys.